We dare say to you that despite all that's happening around you, look on the brighter side of life. You know, there's so many good things happening, and we hope that this show is one of those things. Now, raising a child in the 21st century requires a lot of wisdom and communication. But now, how do we ensure that there is a balance? Our guest, Bisi Ibitayo, is propelled by a firm belief that there is more to everybody's life than where or who they are presently. Now, she therefore sets out to challenge the mindset of youths and adults alike and assist them in attaining the level of excellence ordained for them. Our guest holds a certificate in leadership principles from Harvard Business School and a master's degree in adult education administration from University of Lagos. She has worked in the school system for 24 years, rising from the post of a school teacher, a class teacher, to head of school. She is a certified relationship counselor, and she has a lot to share with us on how parenting in the 20th century should be.
So let's welcome our guests.
Yes. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning, Helen, and good morning, John. Thank you for having me on today. I'm so excited to be here with you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very sensitive matter that we have on the front burner this morning. You will agree. Apart from the Chidinma episode, there's been several like that. There are boys who have been seen or reported in the last months, having taken ladies to some hideouts and probably snugged life out of them. So much is happening, and we're beginning to wonder, where did we go wrong as parents? Now, the first question I'd like to pose to you is, we're looking at parenting in the 21st century. What is it that is peculiar and different, and probably what are the demands and the attributes, and the characteristics of the 21st century that makes us to say specific needs and specific requirements need to be put in place for us to be able to parent our children appropriately at this point in time?
Okay, thank you very much here. And I'd just like to say up first, going from what you said about the Chidinma that you made reference to, and all the other boys and things happening around. I'd like to say this, and I say it with all humility and sincerity of heart, that there's nobody who sets out to be a bad parent. We just need to establish that. Nobody sets out to be a parent of a child who murders a man, or a parent of a child who goes into drug. Nobody wakes up and the child is put in your arms on the first day of birth and you say to yourself, I'm going to be a bad parent. What happens? Life happens. Some things happen and it just doesn't work out anyway. So we're talking 21st century. Please, can I say this? Parents aren't necessarily biological people who birth their children. Anyone who acts in the place of a parent in the life of a child is a parent as well. So teachers in school, teachers in your houses of faith, in your places of worship, your neighbors, everybody and anybody is a parent to a child. I'll come to that when I talk about the things that need to be in place for you to be a good parent. What's different about the 21st century is the digital age. I'm sure you both would agree with me, as would other listeners as well. It's an age where our children have everything on their palms. They don't need to go out of the house to do certain things. In those days when we were growing up, you needed to be out of the house to have relationships with your friends. You needed to be out of home a lot of times to get into some form of mischief. But now they can get into all sorts because everything is right there. The world is in their hands, if I can put it that way. So they have the world in their hands. And so when we think of that, obviously, the way we parent changes. When you have a child who doesn't necessarily have to go out of home to dupe someone, doesn't need to go to the cinema to watch pornographic movies, doesn't need to, it's just so, the world is in their hands. And so we can't say the way it worked with us or the way our parents did it is the way you would need to do it with this ones necessarily. So that's what I would say about the difference here now.
That's interesting. And you've touched on some very key points, you've made reference to in those days, these days,
when it was the real world.
Yeah, when
and
it was
now that the virtual world.
Yeah, but you see, I also think it's relative. The dangers or whatever the exposure that we had in those days to the exposure that they have now. Well, anyway, I also believe that our parents never had a workbook for parenting. Yet they seem to have done a better job than we are doing now. What is it about the old school parenting that makes it more attractive or better than the modern day parenting?
Can I say here, John? I don't know how old you are, but for those of us who were born in the 60s, the mid 60s, and I want to believe you probably fall into that category without
earlier than that.
Okay, fine, fantastic. But can I ask you really honestly, John?
Yes.
Is it everyone who was brought up the way you were brought up that turned out well?
No.
So that's it.
Certainly.
So I just needed to establish that a lot of times it's not so much as the way they did in the old or the way that is being done now. I think basically everything about life is finding a balance. It's finding what works for you. You see, I am careful when I listen to professionals, so to speak, come up and profess solutions or give you principles and they list it out. Yes, fine, great. But you know what? What works for you might just not work for my children. And so it's essential that every person, every parent must take time to study their children. You must study who your child is and have an understanding of what's going to work for your child. Even children born by the same parents, right? It is often, you would discover, I'm sure you would agree with me to a large extent, that the kind of punishment, the kind of discipline, not punishment now, the kind of discipline you would bring for this person might just not work for the other person. I mean, I grew up in the mid-60s. I was born in the mid-60s. And my father's parenting style, like it was with a lot of them, was the authoritative style. I mean, the kind of style that says, this is the way I want it, and that's the way it's going to be. I mean, you do anything, and then you turn your back, you're smart. I didn't like being smart. I didn't like it at all. And so I would always be careful not to do anything that would get me into trouble. But my brother didn't have a problem with that. And all he would say most of the times is, tops, he'll beat me. Do you understand? And so for him, it wasn't working for him. Although we had an authoritative father. We had a father who was authoritarian. That's the word now, in his approach and in his style, right? But for me, if my mom said things to me, I would ruminate on what she has said. I would think about it, and those words would haunt me, if I can use that word here. Those words would haunt me to a large extent. I would keep thinking about it, and because I didn't want her to speak to me in that way again. So what happens? I'm careful not to do those things that will bring those words back into my life. Yeah. So see, authoritarian father in those days, in that age, but his style was just not the same. It wasn't getting the same effect on both children. So that's why I said we must be careful here. So I want to say, in the days when we grew up, we had more of authoritarian parents. We had them. I mean, they were the ones who would say to you, that's the way it's going to be. That's what I say, and it has to be that way. They were the ones who determined what courses we had to study in the university. And so you found out at that time that a lot of students in those days were doing jam. And because they didn't get in for medicine, they didn't get in for law, they didn't get in for different things that their parents wanted them to study, pharmacy, and those kind of high-flying courses at that time. They couldn't get into the university. So you had some people writing these exams over and over again. Why? Because their parents were authoritarian in nature and they wanted it to be their way. Do you understand? And so this style that they had in those days would also filter to many other things. Are you talking discipline? Are you talking emotional relationship? Are you talking bonding? And so that was just the way it was. So like I said, the styles were different. Of course, now you find it's a different ballgame in this age with children this century. It'll be difficult for you to say to your child, go and study this. Because even half the times, the parents are following the trends happening. They're seeing the young boys like those paystack boys making money from IT and doing very well at that. And so they're saying to themselves, why must my son be a medical doctor? Especially in this climate where we have, in this place, Nigeria, where they're not well paid. And so parents tend to be more flexible, if I can use that word. And so there's now a balance that wasn't existing before. I could say that.
Well, very interesting. It's time to take a quick break. We hope that you are getting all the bits and pieces put together from the discussion with our guest and the angle that is exposing us to as we look at parenting in the 21st century. It's Today with John and Helen on PlusTvAfrica. We'll take a quick break, but please don't go away. Thank you for staying there. Dr. Bisi Ibitayo is still helping us to understand and unravel what it takes to be a good parent in the 21st century to our younger ones. At this point in time, I was going to look at the relational friction, you know, that seems to be a huge problem. But let's just hold it there and get to the nitty-gritty of this subject matter. Kindly tell us at this point, what are the expectations and the requirements and the qualifications, if I can use that word, of a good parent in the 21st century?
Okay, and can I just say this? I don't have a doctorate degree yet, so it's just Olabisi Gita. I just need to correct that. I just have to correct that.
Thank you.
I said about the style, the different styles of parenting. There's the authoritarian, the one who is assertive. There's the authoritative, the one who gives instructions but also listens to the child. There's the one who is not the permissive style, that everything and anything you want to do is fine. What's expected of me as a parent? In this generation, the first thing I like to ask is that it's essential that we're there, our presence. I call them the 5 Ps. That's presence, provision, protection, partnership, and prayer. Presence, what do I mean by this? A lot of times, most people are not there. They're not in the children's lives. We're so the 9-to-5 job. You work on the island, you live on the mainland in this part of the world. You have to leave home at 5 o'clock. By the time you get back, the children are in bed. School functions happen. I mean, I was ahead of school, and I know the way it used to be. You'd hear, we give out letters to the students, take them home, your parents will come, and we hear children say immediately, I know my mommy won't come. I know my daddy won't come. And so it's a standard for them, because their presence is never there. And you go, why do you think he won't come? She's busy, she's at work. She'll say, it's me, it's because of me she's working. And so I believe the presence is essential. Presence at school functions, presence when they do things, presence, visiting days, not handing over your responsibilities to the drivers only, or to the nannies or aunties. And when I'm saying presence, I'm talking both parents here. Sometimes you will find the mothers there and the fathers are busy, and you keep hearing things like, it's just because of the family I have to do this. Presence emotionally too, can I say this? A lot of us are physically there, but we're not emotionally there for our children. We don't know what is going on in their minds. We don't know what they're going through. I mean, we all read the story about that young girl that the mom went to take from school and whatever. And I was saying in my mind, what was this child going through? Could the parents gauge what was happening in the life? Were they really present for her? Can you tell, can you gauge the emotional feelings, the feelings going through your child's mind? When you're not there, it's almost impossible for the child to let you know what's happening. I'll give you a very good example. When my children were in primary school, in secondary school, because of the kind of job I did, I had time, I would want to pick them up from school myself. And sometimes when we're driving home from school, because what has happened in school is still fresh in their minds, you would hear them say things to me, asking me questions. You hear, Mommy, is it okay? Is it good for an adult to do this? And so times like that, or maybe in their conversations with their friends that are with them, around them, I get filters of what's happening in their minds and in their lives. How present are you in the lives of your children?
Yes.
Present there physically to celebrate their achievements. The second thing that is important is provision. This is very important. Provision, being there, being able to provide for them. You know, a lot of people were going on, it's because some children have to fend for themselves. Even when we were growing up in my generation, there were times the parents could not really meet up to provide for the needs. And so you will find in the bid for a lot of these people, children, to want to have certain things. Sometimes it's even the basic things, you'll be shocked. If you have to be careful, I'm a person of faith, but let's be mindful how many children we churn out there. Yes, it's God that provides, but please, can you do the math? Can you be sure that you can sustain what it is you're bringing into the world? If there's nothing more demeaning for an individual when you have to rely or depend on other people for things, provision is very important. And also, I need to say this, protection. How much of the people who come into our children's lives do we know? I mean, like there was an instance of a young boy who had a habit in primary school of lifting up the skirts of the girls in his class. And it was weird. It was weird for a 4-year-old to be doing this. And so this boy was brought to me and we questioned him. And we found one word that this boy said to us, and he goes, Mrs. Ibitayo, he said, the reason I do this is because that is what Uncle X does to my sister. We were shocked. Uncle X, we knew Uncle X to be the parents' driver. And so we're going, Uncle X does this. He said, yes. He said, when we're coming to school, when he's bringing me to school, he makes my sister sit in the front seat while I go to the back. And he says to me, lie down and close your eyes. He says, but most times I don't. 4-year-olds, you'll be amazed at what they know. But most times I don't close my eyes. And so he watches the driver dip his fingers into his sister's vagina. I use the right word because it's important that we get this. What am I saying? Protection. Yes, you can't be there to take your children to school all the time. Can you get someone who is there to watch over them? All these people in your house, I go into some homes, I see a lot of male adults. I have issues on my hands. I have young girls, 13, 19-year-old girl, who said to me that she was abused physically, sexually by her mother's sister's husband. That's her uncle. This happened under her parents' roof. Who comes into your home? We can't afford to be careless. We can't afford to just let everybody and anybody come into our home. Yeah. And then these children, and this girl I'm talking about here, you want to come in or should I hold on a bit?
Yeah, you said the 5 people.
Yeah, you've given us 3 of them. It's given us 3. Maybe.
Okay, fantastic. So quickly, and so we're talking here, I'm talking protection here. And this girl calls me in a phone call, a 19-year-old, and says to me, the first time she was sexually abused was when she was 6 by her auntie's husband, who's a pastor. And I decided to use that relief so that we would understand. So it's not so much as the toga that the people around our children wear. We must be protective. We must put the things in place. We must put the right things in place. They must be checks to ensure that they are not in wrong hands. The fact that the person is your brother, you don't know who your brother is fraternizing with. You don't know what ideas. A lot of children are into pornography because their uncles or the maids or the drivers. A lot of children are doing drugs because the drivers, the uncles, the people we expose them to are exposing them to greater danger. The next thing I'd like to talk about is partnership. Partnership, and this means collaboration to me. How much partnership do you have with the people who are stakeholders in the lives of your children? I say this because I'm a teacher. Can I say this to you? Sometimes the teachers in school know more about the emotional, the physical well-being of these children more than the parents do, because they spend a lot of hours in school. We are the ones who hear their conversations. We, the teachers, are the ones who hear when the boy is telling his friends how his father beats his mother every day. And then you begin to say to yourself, what is happening here? Partnership. Talk to your children's teachers. Find out about them. I recall the first time I realized that my daughter was afraid of me was from her Sunday school teacher. And for all I knew then, I believed I was a good parent. I was doing what I should. I was being careful what she should do. I was putting the right things in place. But I was getting to be a parent that she held in fair and great. And she walked up to me one day and said to me, can I talk to you for a moment? Mind you, a minister in the church, an ordained minister who preaches from the pulpit. That's who I was at that time and who I still am. And so she said she wants to have a conversation with me. And I'm wondering what she wants to talk about. And she goes, do you know your daughter is really afraid of you? And I go, I'm thinking in my head, afraid of me? Isn't that a good thing? She says, no, afraid of you in a negative way. She says, and if she continues like that, she will not find, if you continue that way, Mrs. Ibitayo, she will not find you approachable and won't be able to have the right conversations with you. How old was my daughter at this time? She was still in the children's church, so she wasn't a teenager yet. I had to recalibrate. And so why am I saying this? Who are the people in the lives of your children? What relationship do you have with the stakeholders? I've had people say to me that they found out their children were doing drugs from their drivers. If you're carrying shoulder for your hired helps, if your mates find you unapproachable, your drivers find you unapproachable, they are the ones who see the kind of people our children walk with. When they find you, will they be able to walk up to you to tell you that this is what I've observed? A woman walked up to me for counseling and said to me her daughter was doing drugs. How did you find out? Her mate told her daughter was doing drugs. But now, if you are the madam or the oga of the house, and all you do, you're high and lofty, lifted up, far above everybody, how will they be able to tell you what your child is going through?
Okay, the final point.
The final
Let's
P.
Get the final
the
P.
fifth P.
Okay, so the final P I would say is prayer. I'm a person of faith. You will need to pray. It's essential we pray. We must pray. We will do our bit, but then God, of course, faith without works is dead. We must pray. We must commit them into the hands of God, asking God to guide them, asking God to guide them and put them in the center of His will for His life. So I'll just stop there and then hear you.
Yeah,
Wow.
Mrs.
That's a
Ibitayo.
lot for the parents.
Yeah, quite a lot. And it's quite a handful, you know. Now, you've given us 5 Ps, and each one is has its own, you know, its own merit. Mrs. Ibitayo, that's quite a handful for many of us parents.
Yes,
Of course, you know, there must be a bullseye somewhere. The bullseye, in other words, a successful outcome which we seek. And this is increasingly elusive in good parenting these days. Now, all of these things that you've told us, where will we find the bullseye? What is that singular thing that we must be to be good parents?
You see, can I say this, John? It's you put me in a spot when you ask that question, and I'll say this to you. I don't want anybody to run away thinking that once I do this, I've got it covered, because there's no one thing you do that has this covered. You know, I said when I started off that we do our bit, we all come in, we make sacrifices, we do what we should do. At the end of the day, ultimately, we're hopeful and trusting God that it turns out well. What is the bullseye for me might just not be the bullseye for you. And that's really, I'm serious about that here now. And so these principles that I follow are what I do to guide me and what I advise people to guide them as well. And if you now say narrow it down to that one thing, I believe it's a presence. I could say presence. If you're there with them, when I say presence, not physically only.
Yes.
There's an assurance. The presence I'm talking about here also gives an assurance that even when they do something wrong, they know they could always go back home, and that you will welcome them, even though there are consequences for wrong actions and decisions, but that they always feel like home and parents is some person and people they could always go back to. And so it reduces the counsel they receive that is negative from out there. And I think that kind of creates a balance, if that's what you mean here.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a word I've been looking for, that balance. And how difficult, how easy is it, you know, to find ourselves in that spot? A lot of this fallout, you know, the evil that we see, if I can use that word, you know, being manifested by our children, we find them now with the internet, you know, they're all over the place. And it doesn't mean that these things haven't been in existence in the past. A lot of these people, Chidima, for example, is 21 years. A lot of these guys are either in their 18s or in their 20s or in their 30 years. And from your last response to our question, you seem to have narrowed down the ages, you know, of these children to 5 years, to 10 years, to 12, to 15 years. Are you saying that, you know, the formative years also have a lot to do with who our children eventually turn out to, you know, especially when you gauge it back to back with the prevailing circumstance? It's so difficult for the parents to be physically or emotionally present. The issues that are affecting the parents are so mammoth. You know, how do we go around this, please?
Can I say this, Helen? It's better to get it right than to repair. It's easier. Anything in life is easier built correctly than having to repair. And so I do agree with you about foundational, getting it right. And one of the things I talk about, can I ask you a question? Can I say this? I ask people questions. I say, what are the values that hold your family? What are the things you believe in? Can I ask your child, your 20-year-old, your 21-year-old, your 30-year-old, can I ask them questions like, what are the values that your parents believe in and they have kind of put in you? What would you say? Just a lot of people don't know. They don't know words like integrity. They don't know words like kindness. They don't know the basic things. They don't know about forgiveness. And so if these values are not there, then what are we building on? Please, I'm not talking the Christian faith alone also. I'm talking everybody in general.
Yeah.
We sit down, we talk about leadership that has gone wrong in the nation. And then you ask yourself, what values did their parents put in them? Which brings me to foundation. So it's essential we get it right. Sometimes what you see in adults is a factor of what was put in them as children. And so they go with that. I'm a marriage counselor. I listen to a lot of marriages that have issues. And you find out that it's a factor of what has been put in them. And so what are we modeling as parents? Let me ask that question also. What do the children see in us? How do they perceive us? What can they say about us? A young boy had a habit of shouting down on people, and he would talk down on them, and it was basically females. And we asked him, why are you always this way? And he said to us, brazenly, looked me eyeball to eyeball. He says, because my dad says a girl must never talk back at you. And I'm saying to myself, that is a monster that is being grown. That is someone who is going to work in a certain corporate environment, and he just won't take instructions from a female. Why? Because his father has told him that. So what are we modeling as parents? I'd like to ask us here.
Yes. I mean,
that was meant to be your next question.
That was meant to be my question. How important is role modeling in today's parents? And I'm happy you've touched on it, because, quite frankly, it is what the children see that they know.
Yeah.
So
going deeper into this, does the age of the parents, for example, does it affect the outcome of parenting in this century?
I didn't hear that, Helen. Could you please take that again?
The age of the parent. We're having more parents younger now. We're having younger people, have children. So does the age of the parents affect the outcome of parenting in the 21st century?
Well, I could say, can I say this? I have friends who have grandchildren. Do you know a lot of these young ones who are having children are leaving the parenting to their parents? Why? Because they're busy at work. And so some of them, it's the mother, that's the grandmother or the grandfather, who stays at home to look after these children. Do you get that? Yeah. So sometimes I ask, how ready are you to parent? Parenting is not wassail. It's not child's play. It isn't. A lot of people, many people get married because people want them to get married. The society puts pressure on them. Their parents put pressure on them. A lot of people are not prepared for what we find. Nobody sat me down to teach me on parenting, and I'm sure I can say the same for both of you. Meanwhile, even till today, you will hear places are worship, places of faith. They're concerned about you becoming a multimillionaire in dollar. So you have financial seminars holding. You have marriage seminars holding. You have skill acquisition. How many people, how many faith-based organizations really deal with parenting? Nobody tutors anybody. It's just, is it pay as you go, learn as you go? And so we all make mistakes along the line. The younger ones are wiser because they understand, a lot of them understand that they don't know how to do this. And so they let their parents take control. Can I also say this, or can I say this also? Sometimes the way we parent has to do with some things we have suffered in our past.
Okay.
I don't know if I can say that now.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, I'll explain this. I'll find some parents who are very, they allow their children to get away with all sorts. They're permissive. You call it the permissive parenting style. These are people that it's fine whatever they do. They want to go out, let them go. They want to have this, let them go. And then when you listen to them, you hear, when I was younger, I was deprived of this. Hey, can I say this to you, dear parent? The fact that you were deprived of certain things does not mean you have to go overboard in your provision for your children. There has to be a balance. And so you will find people that, when I was younger, my father didn't let me go out much. I want my children to go out much. Where is the balance? Okay. Let's not go overboard in these things. We need to sit down and think. We really need to be careful the way we go. So age, how ready are you? How mature are you? How much? How many people read up on parenting? How many people ask for advice on parenting? Like in our days when we were growing up, everybody had a say in what you had to do. But unfortunately, in this 21st century, we're all fenced around. Yeah. You don't even know who your neighbors are. Nobody has a say. Your grandparents, sometimes you don't even see them. And so how much input do you get? It's from the maids, the hired helps, the drivers, because your parents aren't even there. So maturity is important. A readiness to learn, to know, to ask questions from people who have done it before. And then that way, I think we can increase our pool of knowledge and probably we will do better.
Well done.
So now we need some balancing act here, because we have to live our lives at the same time, look after the the children. So there's a lot of balancing that one needs to be able to get right there.
I think also that there's a need for us to be ready. Be ready for this responsibility.
Yes.
Because it's
are we ever ready, Helen?
It's a critical.
Are we?
Well, getting ready is, you talked about finding, asking questions,
Yes.
attending
Yes.
seminars, for example. If you have issues in specific areas, look for where they have answers, and get over it, instead of
Absolutely.
just covering up in the house and probably expecting miracle to happen, when you have things going wrong here and there. Now, what would be your final words on this very important subject matter? Because the younger ones become the leaders of tomorrow. And if we're beginning to have loads of crises and issues with them today, then the situation that we find ourselves in this country and in the world today that we're all lamenting about would probably be child's play in the future. What would be your final words, please?
Can I say this? And you'll have to pardon me, I'm an apologetically Christian. I don't believe it's an accident that we have those children. And like I said when I started off, I don't think anybody sets out to fail. But when we do not put the right things, the right measures in place, we will ultimately fail. Nobody is a custodian of knowledge. Seek counsel, ask questions, ask people. Don't be ashamed. If your child is going through an issue, I have people whose children are doing drugs and all they do is go to church, lay hands. Please, I believe in the efficacy of prayer. But there are people who God has put this wisdom in to deal with. If you need help, specialized help, professional help for your children in any area, don't act as if you know it all, because you don't even know a quarter of a thousand of whatever it is you need to know. Get help. Ask the right questions. Don't let the devil thrive in the place of secrecy with your family. Put values in place. Ensure that your children understand what you stand for. You can't say you're a parent and you're teaching your child the right way to behave, how to treat people well, and you come back from church on Sunday, you're gossiping about your pastor. And then the next day your child sees you, your teenage daughter or your 22-year-old son sees you kneeling down and getting up and greeting that same pastor. We put a lot of confusion in their minds. Let's be role models that are worthy of emulation. Be concerned about their emotional well-being. Ask them questions. Know their friends. Know their friends and know their friends. Be interested. And then can I say this? Don't let anything they ever tell you shock you. Don't ever act shocked by anything they say. I remember the first day my daughter said to me, they discovered that someone in her school, a girl, a 15-year-old girl or 13 there at that time, was doing marijuana. And she did it in school. She was caught. This is a girl I know that had been to the house. I didn't act shocked because I was careful, because if the minute you act shocked, the more dangerous ones, they won't tell you. So I was like, I just kept going, oh dear, poor her. Oh dear, poor her. I didn't run my mouth and say, you're working with that, because she can't tell. Sometimes these children can't even tell who they're working with. And this other girl who had this issue definitely didn't want to get to that point. Peer pressure. Probably got her there for some attention or whatever. So please, let's be their friends. Let's be there for them. Let's listen to them. Let's hear them. Let's correct and let's discipline them when we need to. Let's stop acting like they won't die. They won't die. Let's be firm with them. Let them understand what we stand for. And finally, like I said, let's keep praying that they'll turn out well.
Wow.
Thank you so
much.
much.
And I think this discussion is not one that we should have, in one
outing.
In one outing.
True.
As a matter of fact, this is something we need to talk about
almost every day.
Very often, and take it even to, to the schools themselves. Let them watch programs like this, so that people will better understand the intricacies, of good parenting.
It's a huge task.
I really must thank Mrs. Ibitayo
she's done
for
great.
your contribution this morning. I mean, we've had to ram in so much into this very short time, but I tell you that you've really made an impression on all of this.
And I dare to say I'm going to take away the 5 Ps and try to let other people know. After now, the 5 Ps, very important. I knew about presence, I knew about protection and provision, but the other things that you brought into it, they seem like the normal, but it's important for us to hang on to those 5 Ps, and a few others, you know, to ensure that we raise human beings as children, human beings. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of the program today. We will call upon you again from time to time, and we believe you'll be there for us.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you, Helen. Thank you. It's been my pleasure being here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
bye for now.
Right after the fitness segment, which will be
that is available,
which will be coming up soon.
Yes.
Ferron will be sitting with the founder of Lagos Moms, Yeti Williams, on raising Generation Z.
Not Generation X this time, but the Z generation.
Yeah, Z is American, Z is British. I think I'm more British than American.
Okay.
So raising the Generation Z.
We'll be back.
Coming up soon.
After the
break.
Yes.